Let's briefly review the items that we'll be using to make this project. First of all, it's the new Wow Melt It powder. This is a very fine granule size and melts very much more quickly than, for instance, the larger ultra high granule. It melts clear, which makes it ideal for this project. I'll be melting it in a disposable foil pie dish using a melt pot as the heat source, but you could also use the heat tool from underneath or pop it in an oven to melt it. I'll be stamping with a clear embossing ink, in this case Versamark, and we'll be stamping items from the Deck the Halls clear stamp set and the Merry and Bright Christmas clear stamp set. We'll be embossing with one of the glitter embossing powders, for example the metallic brass sparkle or the red Glitz. I'll be drilling a hole through using this 2mm drill bit just between my fingers, and above all else we are working on a non-stick craft sheet. So to start we need to have some molten powder. So I'm going to take a generous scoop of the melted powder, place it in my pie dish, and I'm going to leave that now to melt. If you're using a melt pot, it helps to have the lid on. Please don't, if you're using a heat gun, heat it from above, otherwise the powder will go everywhere. The powder should be melted by now, so I'm just going to take the lid off and move it to the side so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take a pair of tweezers, or you could use a wooden clothes peg to hold the dish firmly. Make sure that the powder is evenly molten, and then on the non-stick craft mat we're just going to pour some puddles directly onto the sheet. Hopefully you've got a level work surface. If not, like that one, it'll flow in all sorts of directions. If you find that the powder isn't pouring evenly or is stuttering, then your liquid isn't hot enough and you'll need to reheat it. Any shapes that you don't like, you can throw back into the melting pot to remelt the powder as many times as you like. Gradually the powder will get slightly darker as it cooks, but you can keep remelting if there's shapes you don't get on with. I'm going to leave those to cool completely now. Now they're set, and really the only way to know whether it's happened is to wait, but you can maybe see a little bit of turn up at the edges once the embossing powder starts to shrink. As it cools, it'll turn up. Alternatively, dab it with anything but your finger to see whether it's set, and occasionally you'll find one that hasn't and you'll need to remelt it. But once they're set, they'll just peel off your non-stick craft sheet and you get these lovely puddles of embossing powder. The craft sheets usually have a sort of fabric weave to them, which also gives texture on the back. So these are the puddle shapes I'm happy with, and I'm going to work on the side that's been on the craft sheet because I know that's flat. I'm going to ink up the asterisk snowflake from the Merry and Bright Christmas clear stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp onto the reverse of that puddle. By pressing down I can see how well the stamp is covering, and on the curved edges you may need to rock the stamp from side to side slightly. Also, the ink on the smooth surface will make things slip and slide a little if you're not gentle. Once you've done that, take your clean piece of paper. I'm using red Glitz. Cover it liberally with your embossing glitter. Tip it off, and then I use the handle of a paintbrush just to give it a couple of taps, and any stray glitter that's sticking tends to fall off. If not, use the other end of the paintbrush just to brush those stray flecks away. There we go. Take that back into the jar, and then we need to heat set, and you can do this all in a bunch. I'll just do one for time. And the secret of the heat setting is to just melt the powder into the surface of the puddle. You don't need to heat for very long. Watch for that matte powder finish to become shiny, then move on with the heat tool. If you melt it too much, then the coloured powder starts swimming in a pool of molten clear powder and you lose the definition of the stamp. So a couple of things to notice. Some of that weave pattern from the craft sheet has disappeared because it's molten and has smoothed out on its own. So you could give it an extra blast just to do that if you wanted it smooth. By flipping it over, the same colours are apparent. So your choice of embossing glitter is important here because some of them don't appear the same both sides. For instance, the magical mauve is more white on the back side and obviously the purple glitter on the top, and this is because of the white core to the particles. Finally, whilst it's still a little bit warm, take your drill bit and just in your fingers twist the drill bit into the warm powder and it'll go through really quite easily. Those clear drillings could go back and be remelted if you want to do so, otherwise bin them. And that is your decoration ready for hanging. This time I've got the Joy sentiment from the Deck the Halls stamp set. Going to ink that up, and it doesn't matter which side you stamp it on because it will always be in reverse on one side compared to the other. So I've inked that up. Sheet of scrap paper. This time I'm using metallic silver sparkle. Again, flood it, tip it, tap it. This time we've not got any stray glitter. Pop that back in the jar. And again, we'll heat set. So the silver works really well, lovely solid image there. We flip it over and we see that we've got yodge, but the silver sparkle really works well. So again, whilst it's still a little bit warm, push through with your drill bit between your fingers. Now, if it goes cold, then it will still drill, but it's liable to be a lot more fragile, and if you put any pressure using the drill bit, it probably will crack. If that's the case, then you could always remelt it, but of course the silver and sparkles will remelt into it as well. Could be an interesting result. So I'm going to tie these up as tree decorations, or perhaps you could use them as a Christmas mobile. Tie them to a wreath, stick them as a hanger to a card. Even small ones you could use as earrings, as a pendant to a necklace, but bear in mind that the powder in this form can be quite brittle, so try not to overly pull it or tug it, as the narrow area is likely to snap.